unconventional. We want civil rights organization, housing organization, and art and cultural organization to work together from the greater good of the community. So here I just want to introduce one of the founder of CMAC. It's Stephen Gong right here. Stephen. And many of the founding organizations are also here. So CMAC really have a grand dream, and I take this opportunity of being asked by API Council to host this the meeting today to share with you our grand dream. So our dream is to use this opportunity to spark dialogues on matters that are important to all Americans, and we're going to be a safe space to chat about important issues and to talk about white supremacy, racism, anti-API hate, and building coalition. And we want to be a place to promote inclusion and the building of a just America. But most of all, we want to be a fun place for visitors and residents alike to explore the most innovative art and activities. So in doing so, Speaker, we want to be part of your team to build inclusion, to transform minds, and to be a strong voice for immigrants. So without further ado, I would like to turn the podium to our co-chair, Dean Ito Taylor. Dean.
Thank you, Mabel. You know, it's difficult to introduce Speaker Pelosi. One, we have known her as part of our community since she was elected. Two, of course, she's the most powerful woman in Washington, so we cannot help but know the work that she accomplishes on our behalf. But just as a reminder for the Bay Area and San Francisco, let me just run a few facts and figures down for some of the newer people. Of course, some of us are senior. As part of, the Washington establishment, Speaker Pelosi was instrumental in passing the Affordable Care Act. And let's not forget, even though, the Affordable Care Act is now hopefully mainstream in America, let's not forget the significance of the right to health care for all Americans. As part of her efforts to build affordable housing and revitalize our API communities, she was instrumental in getting $31 million in federal money to revitalize and preserve public housing. She was instrumental in funding the kind of revitalization, renovation of Nihonmachi Terrace, the senior housing complex in Japantown. $90 million in rental assistance as part of the American Rescue Plan. $49 million to combat homelessness as part of the CARES Act, and almost $19 million additional money for homelessness prevention in the American Rescue Plan. Finally, $1 billion, that's a big number, $1 billion to support the construction of the Central Subway here in San Francisco that will benefit Chinatown and other communities. It's not just about money for us, right? Is it? It's not. It's not just about money. Speaker Pelosi has been an advocate on our behalf. I want to point to the American Rescue Plan last year, where she was instrumental in providing over $1 billion in monies to support gender-based violence services, the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, and primarily she was instrumental in making sure that that act benefited immigrant women, Native women, and the LGBTQ community. Of course, we continue to struggle. We face the anti-Asian violence surge that continues. We face the continuing racial violence that acts out in forms of gun violence. We ask for her continued advocacy to prevent buffaloes, no more Dallas Koreatowns. And with you to ensure that every woman has the fundamental right to reproductive health care. And so thank you so much, Speaker Pelosi, for being with us today and past years and in the future. Welcome to the API Council Roundtable.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your very generous introduction. I accept every compliment on behalf of the House Democrats who make so much of that possible, and we're very proud of President Biden and the Vice President as well, first Asian American Vice President of the United States, for their cooperation in all of this. Some of this is historic and others brand new. Thank all of you. Well, because I heard what Mabel said in the beginning, I think I will take a little different tact. I was just shuffling the cards here because every time he said something, I thought, get rid of that. He already said that. And let's just have a real conversation as we can get into questions sooner. But if I just may stand up so I can see all of you better. Mabel, thank you. Thank you for your invitation to be here, for your leadership here, and for pointing out that some of our solutions are really better reached and solved by going through the arts, where there can be understanding. Now, let me just first say thank you to all of you. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your hospitality. Gordon and I have been working on housing for how many years, Gordon? Forever, it seems. Forever. And Annie, with self-help for the elderly, we go way back, right, Annie? A very long time. And they have been leaders. I have learned from them along the way. Mabel, thank you. Sandy Morey. Does this not work? Sandy Morey, thank you. Claudine oh my gosh. We take orders from Claudine, or whether it's a stamp or a day or whatever it happens to be. All of you have been wonderful teachers, friends, and resources in terms of where we go from here. My very first just may talk politics for a moment. My very first political event was in Chinatown. Florence and John Fang at the time had it at their restaurant. My very first event. It was not a fundraiser. It was a community event. People coming in to meet this new person who was going to be running for Congress. My most recent birthday, I celebrated in Chinatown, in addition to coming here politically. But in any event, personally, politically, but more importantly, from a policy standpoint, you have been a tremendous resource. Most of you know that much of what I have been able to do in terms of immigration, I learned in Chinatown. The most successful naturalization programs in the country, in our Chinatown, and springing from our community. So any challenges that we have that we need to confront, I know where to come to know more about all of that. But let me just get to what Mabel said about the arts. I truly believe that in this difficult time in our country, where there's such division, and you have addressed some of it, about some of the hate crimes and the rest, where there's such division, one of the things that gives me hope are the arts. Because when we are dealing through the arts, speaking in that way, we laugh together, we cry together, we're inspired together, we forget our differences. Even among ourselves as to approach and the rest, we forget our differences. And this is really important because as we come out of Memorial Weekend, and we are all quoting at Presidio yesterday, President Lincoln talked about unifying, bringing people together, and he said, we do that, we strengthen that union by the better angels of our nature. Better angels of our nature are what, Mabel, you were talking about. So this is just remarkable because it frames the coming together that we've had year in and year out. Yes, but in smaller groups, a different subject matter, etc., even in between those annual meetings. But to take it to a place through the arts where people can really understand there are solutions. That's why we want to have the Smithsonian Institution recognize the role of the Asian Pacific American community. That's historic, and there are actual bills and things we all talk about, but we do have shall we say, artistic presentation of it. I'm happy to say that on Tuesday, 1 week from today in Washington, we will have the enrollment ceremony for Grace Mang's bill to send it on to the president to be signed in terms of a step toward getting that museum at the Smithsonian. So I just wanted to take it to the place that you brought us to begin with gratitude for your recognition of so many of these things, but many of them would not have happened without the intellectual resource the community has always been. I come here to hear what your current and more recent concerns are, or confirming others that have been there. And there's so many things to talk about that I thought probably the best thing to do was for us to more quickly get to questions so that the priorities of the discussion are your priorities. But listening to the different organizations, some of which I've worked with for decades, others new, all very exciting. I'll just close by saying this, or did I say I was going to close already? Well, let's just close another time. I might mean it this time. And that is to say, just what I said before, it's a difficult time out there. I don't know what the motivation is for some people, but the fact is their own insecurities make them concerned about newcomers to our country, people who are different from them. And again, the America's greatness springs from the fact that we have had an open door for newcomers to our country. And every family that has come here, some of them 200 years ago, some of them 2 months ago, every newcomer comes to America with their optimism. Imagine the courage, the hope for a better future for their families. Those optimism, hope, courage, those are American traits. And every newcomer who comes with those traits makes America more American. So even Ronald Reagan said if we were to close the door, America would lose its prestigious place in the world. Even Ronald Reagan's. You have to read his last speech as President of the United States. It would give you great warmth. Ronald Reagan. I'm quoting now two Republican presidents, Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan. So why don't we just get on with the questions? I know that we focused on healthcare issues, housing, economic opportunity, immigration, violence, the arts, so many things. Why don't we just see how you prioritize? Again, thank you to be here, but also thank you for your leadership, each and every one of you, for what you do. With that, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Gordon, my friend Gordon.
Thank you.
I've seen Gordon get
Thank you.
more awards. I'm witness to more awards for Gordon and
Thank
housing and so many. Is that not
Thank you.
right, Gordon?
Yeah, I don't even know where they are in my basement or something, but thank you. We're right on time. I can't believe it. We have a lot of people who want to ask questions. So for the questioners, let me remind you to be concise. After all, you're asking a question. You're not making a speech. There's only one speaker here, and that's Nancy. So our first questioner is our old friend Sandy Mori, who wants to talk about Japantown.
Sandy, for how many years? I don't know. Forever. A long time.
So, Madam Speaker, in Japantown, we have a renovation project to be done for the Peace Plaza. It's a $25 million commitment from the city. This is part of a bond, an overall city bond that was passed by the voters a couple years ago. So now the Rec and Park Department has informed us that there's a cost overrun of about $8 million. And so we're in the process of trying to look to see how that can be dealt with. I guess the construction costs have gone up, and some of the design issues have to be re-looked at, and we're working with our design team to do that. We've had a grassroots community process to do this, and so this is a very important project in Japantown. So we do know that the Rec and Park here have been talking with your staff in D.C. about this issue, and so we hope that you might be able to help us.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you for your friendship and your leadership over the years. Is this working? Can you hear? Let me just thank you for your question. Of course, Japantown is a source of great pride to us in San Francisco. It's cultural, it's commercial, it's entertaining, it's the arts, it's so many things, and to have it restored or renovated is important. I have, as part of my request, I'm able to make some requests for community project funding for fiscal year for now, the coming year. It's for the budget of next year, but it's in the bill this year. I have requested $4 million to renovate Japantown Peace Plaza. $4 million. And this is what it's for. Waterproofing, install new paving, planting, lighting, and seating, making the space more versatile and community-centric. I'm very proud to support this effort. Thank you. I have to be very specific about the request. Thanks for your question, Sandy.
Thank you, Nancy. Our next speaker or questioner is Annie Chun from Self-Help for the Elderly, and she wants to talk about President's budget.
Thank you, Gordon. And Nancy, the question on immigration, thank you very much for really a long time to forward. But in San Francisco, there's around about 100,000 legal permanent residents that are still not U.S. citizens. So a group of us have formed a consortium, including Green and Self-Help.
I think the mask or something, I'm not sure which.
I found this. Can you hear me? All right, it's better. Sorry. So, Nancy, my question is on the upcoming budget that President Biden and the administration requested for $1 billion for USCIS to do two things. One is about $700+ million to deal with the backlog for the naturalization process, which have dragged on now for sometimes 1.5 to 2 years, which is way too long for someone to wait to become U.S. citizens. The other is a very important budget, $100 million, so that more community groups could apply for this integration and citizenship grants. And last year, they could only fund about half of the proposed project. So would you be able to please work for us and with us to get this $1 billion over to USCIS so that we could all address the question and help more LPRs become U.S. citizens?
Anything you want, Annie. $1 billion, $1 billion. No, but this has been a real priority for all of us, and as you know, this community family unification has been one of our values for immigration, and this backlog has an impact on unifying families as well. So let me just say that we have I know it's 100,000 here, but there's about 4 million backlog in the country, and so we need a number of green cards has been decreased over time. So for our budget of FY22, before it was FY23, but for 22, it included $275 million to help address the backlog, $20 million for citizenship and integration grant program. Now, we are fighting for more in FY23, fiscal year 23, for the USCIS, the program you mentioned, to get more money. We also, in the BBB, which we're not finished with yet, included registry update to help address the backlog so we have a good handle on what it is. But this is so much uncertainty in people's lives because of bureaucratic backlogs, and it's been taking a long time. President Biden has made this very, very important to the tune of hundreds of millions and now $1 billion in the budget as we go forward. So that's a priority for us, Annie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Our next questioner is Joyce Lam from the Chinese Progressive Association. And Joyce wants to talk about income inequality, the racial wealth gap, jobs, and racism. All of those.
Thank you, Gordon, and good afternoon, Speaker. Thank you for that great start. But, with all of those things that Gordon mentioned, I think what we have seen is that we really desperately need greater federal action, right, to champion investments in the care and green economy and uplift workers' rights and enforcement. And we were part of a coalition that surveyed 1,400 essential workers, mostly Asian and Latinx immigrants in the Bay Area. And we found that 75% of workers have lost employment during the pandemic, and only a third of them have access to unemployment benefits. So at the federal level, what actions are you and your colleagues taking to prioritize on an equitable recovery for working families? And specifically in San Francisco and in California, we have led the country in effective collaborations with the Community for Labor Law Enforcement. And I know there are efforts to replicate that at the federal level, but they're stymied by lack of resources. So can we get your support to increase funding and staffing to our woefully under-resourced Department of Labor? And can we bend federal relief to employers who have violated workers' rights to minimum wage, pay sick leave, etc.? Thank you.
Thank you for adding that among your priorities there. Wage inequality, income inequality in our country is harmful to our democracy. It's just wrong. It's just not right. And we see during the pandemic, we've seen distortions even further to what was there even before, which was problematic. And so many people lost their jobs. In fact, we have a big attention being paid to the AAPI, but others as well, community members. In our bills, let me just try to enlarge the moment. In our bills, fight with the previous administration. They did not help us funding for state and local government. State and local government funding funds our police, our fire, our teachers, our food workers, our transportation workers, many public employees, many of whom are of people of color and the rest. So with the money that we and of the particular fairness and opportunity for worker provisions, though, that we are fighting for, some of which we have not. We've passed them in the House, but they haven't gone through the Senate yet. The Richard Trump for it. Fairness Act. Believe that we protect workers against discrimination. Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. That will do a lot of things. Bipartisan infrastructure law. That did a lot. And Build Back Better. Let me just tell you about what President Biden has injected into all of these things. Equity, fairness, justice, whether it's the infrastructure bill, whether it's BBB, whether it was the rescue package, which we passed, by the way, with not one Republican vote, unfortunately. All the things I talked about, state and local government, shots in arms, money in pockets, child tax credit, all of that without one Republican vote. And I hate to say that because I wish it weren't true. In fact, though, the infrastructure bill was bipartisan. And in these bills, he has a formula for justice. For example, if you're going to build construction, don't do it and divide a neighborhood. Do it in a way that unifies a neighborhood. If you want to talk about climate, we have to talk about environmental justice. You cannot have solutions that intensify the injustice of it all because they are health related, whether it's asthma or whatever else, especially children are subjected to. So you're speaking specifically about the workplace, but even making it bigger. Now, one of the things, if we're going to be transformative in all of this, gentlemen, you're wonderful, but we really do have to recognize the cost to women in COVID. Millions of women lost their jobs. Many of them have not gone back. Why? Because there's no child care that is affordable. We have in our bill universal pre-K, which would enable moms and dads to be going back to work. Family and medical leave, enabling people to work or not work if they have to care for somebody. Home health care, you know, Annie, what that is. Home health care, not just child care, but a sibling, an older parent or whatever who has health care needs, and hundreds of billions of dollars to make that happen. Now, it's a lot of money, but it's a small price to pay for justice in our economic system, for justice in our environmental system, for justice in every possible way. So if we're going to be transformative in all the ways that you discussed, we need some resources to do it. And again, our democracy, the middle class is the backbone of our democracy. People who are in it, people who aspire to it. We do believe that the middle class has a union label on it from 100 years ago and all the time since. But in order for that to continue, or us to stave off any assaults on it, people have to be able to work, to be able to leave home knowing that their children, their parent, or whatever is cared for, and not to be worried about what's happening at home. We're always worried about our families, always, but nonetheless to reduce that uncertainty for that. So this is, again, it's transformative, whether we're talking about the Affordable Care Act, and thank you for acknowledging the role of our community in all of that. Thank you for mentioning the Violence Against Women Act. Think of this. When we passed the Violence Against Women Act, we just did again, but the time before, when President Obama was president. Now, the first person to be advocating for violence against women was in the 90s, Joe Biden, as chair of the Judiciary Committee. We passed it. I was an appropriator. We funded it. All that. Okay? So about 6 years ago, when we took up the bill again, the people on the other side of the aisle said, oh, we're for ending discrimination against women, except women who are immigrants, except women who are LGBTQ, and except women who are Native American, as you mentioned. What? Some of the most vulnerable women. They weren't going to do discrimination. So we had to beat them on the floor and pass the bill. But these are all fights. And they're all fights. And you know what? People have to know. President Lincoln, again, a Republican president, he said public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. But for public sentiment to weigh in, people have to know. So as you communicate with your communities, your organizations, as you collaborate with each other, as you teach me what is really working or not, let's make sure that the people know what is in their interest so that they can make sure that the people they vote for understand their priorities. We'd love to make it all bipartisan or nonpartisan. The better angels of our nature to unify. So thank you for that list, and again, your priorities are ours in that regard. Thank you. We'll give that one to George because I used that one. Okay.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. If we could switch. Oh, you want to switch? He wants to switch.
Okay. Thank you. It's not important that you hear me. You have to hear Nancy. Our next questioner is Jerry Yang from Kaiming Head Start, and he wants to talk about how the federal poverty guidelines affect Head Start here in San Francisco. Jerry.
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi. We have 3 Head Start programs in the city, Kaiming, and also my colleague, Monica, and also MNC. It was a beautiful event this morning, by the way. So we all follow the same federal guideline. The poverty guideline for this year, family of 4, is $27,750. It's so unrealistic in San Francisco. We have many families. They live in the city They make a little bit over that, but they still cannot be self-sufficient in the city. And thank you for approving the SNAP, the food stamp, recently to make them eligible. But in the community still we have some families that have worries about the public charge and immigration or application, everything. So we understand that this issue has been under the radar of your office. We would like to ask, is there any temporary solution you can help the San Francisco families out? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your work with Head Start. If I just may tell you a story about Head Start, we were having a women's event in New York about empowerment of women. And a woman got up and she said, I'm a mother of 5, English second language, single mom, all the whole thing. And now I have a job and I'm so proud. And I told my children, my 5 children, that I was going to be speaking today about the importance of Head Start in my transition. So I'm nervous about going in front of all these people at Hunter College in Manhattan. I'd like to rehearse my speech to you. So she told speech to the children, the little children. One of them is still in Head Start, and she says, my daughter talks about this or this and that. Speech. She said, do you have any questions? And the little girl in Head Start said, yeah, I have one question. Who gave you permission to use my name in your speech? Think of the confidence that she got from Head Start, right? The self-esteem, the confidence. Who gave you permission to use my name in your speech? So Head Start is so valued, and thank you for your work with that. The last Head Start reauthorization has been a while, 2007. It provided some flexibilities that allow local programs to adjust enrollment based on community-specific needs. This allows a total of 45% of enrollment made up of families above the poverty line. That you're 45%. And now, additionally, now the Biden administration has eased the process for enrolling. Those eligible for SNAP are categorically allowed to be part of Head Start, as you referenced, and that is important. Of course, in our BBB, we have $390 billion for child care and universal preschool, that families would not have to pay more than 70% of their income. 70% of their income for child care. Middle income family. I'm not talking about wealthy family. I'm talking about. And so this is. Thank you for your work in this regard, and this barrier is something that we cannot have as an obstacle. The president knows that, and that's why, we had changed it to make it 45% can be above the poverty line, but he wants to even do more than that. But thank you for what you do there. Thank you.
We're waiting for the other mic. We got like 12 minutes left, and I think we could fit in the other 3 questions if you're brief. Our next questioner is Teresa Imperial from Bill Sorrell Housing Program, and you could guess she wants to talk about housing.
Thank you. My question is, what are the housing policies or housing priorities policies right now, especially on expanding housing subsidies for seniors and people with disabilities that are not COVID-19 financial hardship?
I thought we can do. Okay. We're not going to do them all together. The housing issue is so important. Again, Gordon has heard me tell this story over the years, time and time again. When I was growing up, my father was mayor of Baltimore. When I was in first grade, he became mayor. When I was in college, he was still mayor. My brother was mayor of Baltimore after. But when my father was mayor, my mother's issue as first lady, as they said in those days, and I don't know, she'd be like first partner or whatever it is today, whatever she'd be today, but as first lady was the housing issue. And she said, how can we teach children love and respect if we do not give them a decent place to live and respect them in that way? And it has such a she believed it had such a psychological impact on families and on children. When she died, I was very proud that the San Francisco, the Baltimore Sun, to go back to Baltimore, put her statement in with her obituary, because that was just what drove her engine, affordable housing. So what do we have? We have $500 billion in the BBB. We're still hoping to get a large amount of that. It includes rehabilitation, rehabbing public housing. Yes, it is Section 8 vouchers. It has funding for housing for disability, as you mentioned. What we have to do, though, is expand stock, as you well know. We continue to have our low-income housing tax credit that we have had to fight for over time to keep that going, because that has been a major help in affordable housing. But we have to fight that all people can live independently and with dignity in their communities, and the community-based support. It's not just the housing, it's a continuum of services that go with many of these things, especially, as you said, for the older, I want to say elderly, I'm elderly, but for the older and people with disabilities. So, but this, and we have brought billions and billions and billions of dollars into San Francisco for this, but we still need more. It isn't enough. And in some of the projects that we brought, Gordon, that we worked on decades ago, need rehabbing now. They need rehabbing now. So this is our chair of our committee, Maxine Waters, has this as a crusade, a mission, that we are going to do what we need to do so that people can have affordable housing, but also that we can address the homelessness problem in our country that really needs to be addressed in many ways, but one of them increasing the stock of affordable housing. So look forward to working with you, continuing to work with you on that. And as I say, Gordon has been, I've seen him on stages in Washington. He's gotten more awards because he's been such an intellectual resource and a successful one for housing in our community. Thank you, Gordon. Next?
We're getting used to this. Our next speaker is Ashley Cheng with the Charity Cultural Services Center. And Ashley wants to talk about hate crimes against AAPIs and public safety. Ashley?
Hi, Ashley couldn't be here today, so Irene is speaking today. Thank you, Madam Pelosi. So with the rampant AAPI hate crimes around the nation right now, we see an increasing racial divide. What is the Fed's plan to address this, and how can we be of assistance to the plan and effort?
Well, actually, I could use my Mother 5 voice here. She also was, the author of a bill that became law. In the House, Grace Ming. In the Senate, Mazie Hirano. This was bipartisan. This is bipartisan. We were so thrilled. Again, what's related to COVID, hate crimes related to COVID. But this is something that obviously has no place in our society. And as I said at the beginning, there are people who just have a problem with diversity and what's new. That's their problem. But we cannot allow the hate crimes to continue. Now, I did have a chance. I just had the list of celebrities that were there. Jose Antonio Vargas, Jeremy Lin, both from San Francisco, but there were other AAPI artists, and we were there for an evening where we lit a candle in the name of somebody from all over the country. We had many, many candles in that regard, and it was so sad to hear the stories Well, you know them. It's no use my even going into them because I would not do them justice. But Grace Meng, the COVID-19 hate crimes bill became law, empowers law enforcement and community organizations to increase access to reporting services, to raise awareness. Again, here's the thing. On this, we really have to tell people when you see something or you are a victim of something, write it down. What did the person say? Because sometimes we have to demonstrate that this is a hate crime, not just bad enough, just an act of violence, but that it is a hate crime. So we need to instruct our community members, and you all do it so well. Write it down. What's the date? What did he actually say? Usually it's what did he actually say? I had the heartbroken, I don't want to say opportunity, but privilege of lighting a candle for Grandpa Visha last year, and then just this May for it. And we all know the assaults on the Korean-owned salon in Dallas, on the Taiwanese American congregation in Laguna. What is this? What makes people think that they can get away with this? One of the reasons I was late was because we were filing our bill on gun violence, and we just have to have background checks, raise the age, store them properly, all the things that the background checks would save the most lives, but there are other things that we can do to reduce the access and the incidence of the violence. And the guns, we're like on a tirade, but on the other hand, in order to get something done, it's probably going to have to be a compromise, but we're hoping that will be the case. I don't have to tell you of the incidents, whether it was in Georgia or the Taiwan incident of a threat there and the rest. It's horrible. It's horrible. And we can't now go back to Mabel and the arts. When we were together, the arts, they were actors, singers, and beautiful, lovely, very motivated to use the arts to help solve the problems by making sure people know that they are worthy of respect, of course, but also that we stand there ready to protect them. It is, it's just an insecurity on the part of some people. We can't understand it, right? We live here. When I come home from Washington, I feel really sorry for my colleagues because they don't all come home to this. This is it. It's so beautiful. Our diversity is our strength. Our unity is our power, and we must all work together. But you must be crazy to think that you're going to get away with attacking the community in this way. And the community, as you know better than I, is a very diverse community. But they just see it all one way as a target, and we have to make sure that everybody realizes that it has no place in our society. But we do have, again, the hate crimes. Imagine this, the racist conspiracy theorists about pandemic fueled 339% spike in anti-AAPI crimes in 2021, from brutal murders to vandalizing businesses. But again, we have to make sure people understand this is unacceptable, but that it will be viewed as a hate crime. So the one thing we keep saying, be vigilant, but also write it down. What did the person say, so they don't get off the hook. One more did we have?
Yes.
Was it?
Nancy, one more. Can I get the mic, please?
Oh,
Thanks. Okay. Well, Nancy, your comments on arts and culture is a perfect segue to our last question, and they will keep it brief. And they are none other than Brenda Wong and Mark Izu from First Voice.
Hi. I'm Brenda, and this is Mark, and we are the executive directors of First Voice. But we began our careers in iHotel, in the basement of iHotel, and we've been doing this work for a very long time. And so my question has to do with the psychology of America. And it has to do with the arts, because the psychology of a people comes from their arts. And there just needs to be so much more investment in the culturally specific contemporary arena for the arts. Culturally specific contemporary is different than traditional arts from the... I'm talking about growing out the cultural continuum of people of color here, even white people who come from Germany or something. If we grow out the cultural continuum, we represent the world. And the way arts are going down is getting more and more divisive, and for the pandemic was horrific for performing artists. But performing artists, we're the ones who pull people together. First Voice is one of the only organizations in the nation that's dedicated to multiracial people, and that's because we don't live like this, we live with each other, right? And so we should be creating art and culture that pulls us together, and you can't go through a day without a song. I mean, you go by a construction site and you hear people's music. You go into preschool and you hear the kids singing, you know. So to think that there's something that's extra, it's not extra. We're talking about the psychology of a nation. Singapore, New Zealand, the UK. I mean, it's crazy. Every other country in the world invests in their culture because we know how important it is to pull the people together. Yet there doesn't seem to be any conversation around growing out the cultural continuum. That's the only way I can think of how to explain it. You know, I'm not talking about blind casting, I'm talking about black people doing Shakespeare. We're talking about the art and culture of the people of the United States. It should be us. Us should be the U.S.
Thank you. I spoke Sunday at Brown University, and I said the night before there was a big dinner for the honor, I got an honor degree, all that stuff, and I said to the people there, this is what I'm going to say tomorrow, what do you think? And they were like, yeah. And I thought I'll do it anyway, because what I wanted to say is, and I'll say this in relationship to what you said, Brenda, the poet Shelley once said, the greatest force for moral good is imagination. Imagination, you put yourself in other people's shoes. Imagination, creative. You, again, as I said earlier today, you laugh together, you cry together, you are inspired together, you find common ground, you forget your differences, and the path. It is a tradition in our country. 250 years ago, John Adams wrote to Abigail Adams, and he said, I must study war and politics so that our sons can study geography, agriculture, what else did he say, commerce, etc., so that their children have the freedom to study poetry and music and architecture and artistry, art. He also tapestry and statuary. But nonetheless, but the thing is that you see that as an ever-expanding opportunity. Ever-expanding opportunity. So the arts are central to who we are. They're central to what humanity is. But in our country, it goes back that far. And different presidents have emphasized it, you know, the Kennedys, this or that. But here we are at this place where we do have to have not only culturally in community, but in the schools. When I go to schools around the country, including in the Bayview and other places, the parents say, please don't take the arts out of the schools. If there's any money to be spent on the arts, that's where kids gain their confidence, drawing and the arts, music, whatever it is, they gain confidence, which helps them succeed in whatever else they're doing academically. And the arts actually have been helpful because I cut this part out because the night before they said, I don't know. But in the arts, you have Wordsworth writing poetry about Sir Isaac Newton in a way that people might not have known about Sir Isaac Newton. So the arts taught them about science. In the capital of the United States, in the science, space, and technology room, what's on the wall is tennis. It's saying, I see it out, look into the world as far as the eye can see, and I see the wonder of what can be. So the arts they help us with other things as well. But it does take some resources. Now, with our bills on the COVID, we did put money for small stages. I don't know if you got any. No? Well, let's see, because we want to do it again, because it certainly was not enough. But for small stages, not only the arts, which are sort of a business, would apply as a business, but the small stages, which are more of a community thing, could succeed. And I think that we have to do much more of that, because it does take resources. Sad to say, it does take resources. And again, we want philanthropy, but we want a public commitment to it as well. But you're on to the right thing. You are on to the right thing. As I said, the arts give me hope because they are common ground. And again, they're a place where we can put our differences aside and at least for a moment think we have something in common that we can grow from. And of course, when we're talking about how we stop violence against the community, the whole beauty of the community. Now, I know what you said about, we're not talking about the arts from the old country. When my children were little, I used to take them to the pagoda and we listened to the Chinese opera. It was interesting to us because you could eat in there while you were listening to opera. This is before any of you were born, probably before your parents were born. But I used to take my kids there for the Chinese opera and the Chinese food. But it is, and don't forget, food is the arts as well. That's a big cultural thing that is unifying. So I see the arts as giving us hope because they are unifying. I think we have to make a bigger commitment to it. And I think that we know how the imperial arts, the ballet, the symphony, the opera, all fabulous and wonderful, and they attract support and the rest. But we have to build it from a community-based art, and again, reflecting the beautiful diversity of our country, so that we're thinking of it not as a source of a hate crime, but as a source of beautifying America as well. So I'm excited about hearing what Mabel talked about, what you both, Mark sort of talked about. He, what would we say? He agreed to, acquiesced to, whatever. But all of you are in one way or another, are a magnificent representation, not only representation, manifestation of what the future of America is. And what I said, Jerry, at the mission, I don't know if you were there, but, oh, you were, you saw the music, the beautiful music. And music just has a way. I always say, you can't dance too much. You cannot dance too much. So let's, get on with it. But what I said there is, this is America. America is going to be beautifully diverse. It is beautifully diverse. And our future is, and our children have to feel so confident about who they are. So confident about who they are, and be respected in such a way that there's no thought that they leave home and are threatened because of who they are. But when you talk about the mission neighborhood centers, as we talked about, and we talk about all the organizations that you represent, you are helping to make the future of America more diverse, therefore more beautiful and more safe for the children, for the children. And that, imagine, it's America, and it looks very different than it would have looked 100 years ago. And that's a great thing. Now, in our country, in the beginning, it was the British, and then they had the Dutch. But they did mind, and then they minded the Irish and the Italians and the this and the that. So we've always had that kind of, I don't know what you would call it, insecurity on the part of some, I'm in, so, pull up the moat or whatever, the bridge to the moat. But nonetheless, this is something that with our immigration policy that Annie talked about and how we make it easier and more predictable, more something that we can be assured of. But we are on the verge of something big here. That we're going to, they tried, I don't have to tell you what some of the things that they've tried to do with elections and this or that and to suppress the vote of certain communities and the rest of that. I don't have to tell you that. You know that. But what we have to do is see every challenge as an opportunity to take us to this great place that is America's destiny, and it is a destiny that reflects the whole beauty of the diversity of our country for the children. Now, I can't leave without saying what I say. We're having an election coming up. I'm not going to talk politics, but I am going to say that when we are recruiting these candidates, and especially we want many, many, many more women, diversity, I always say to them, it's hard. This is hard to run for office. This is not for the faint of heart. This is hard because you become a target. It's about power. So when you are there, you get into the arena. I'm going to name another Republican president, Teddy Roosevelt. When you're in the arena, so you get in that arena, you're not a spectator anymore, you're a player. But I say you're in the arena now. When you're in the arena, you have to be ready to throw a punch, take a punch. You have to be ready to take a punch. You have to be ready to throw a punch for the children. For the children. Now, not to be violent, I'm talking political punch. You know what I mean? You know what I mean with that. But in any event, I feel so exhilarated just to be with you. I feel so confident that with the activities that you are engaged in with your organizations and how you collaborate with each other and how you strengthen America by what you do and the confidence you have and what you convey to children, that it is a great thing for our country, and as we go forward, we'll get through some of this ugliness, what I call it, and I think that one of those paths are through the arts. So thank you for the cultural aspects as well as the economic and health and immigration, all the other aspects of it, which I do believe are connected. Thank you all so much. Lovely to be with you. There's another question.
Thank you, Speaker, for spending this afternoon with us. I think it is evident that, with your office and with our members around this table, that one of the things that we're constantly working on and themes that came up are poverty and equity. Here in San Francisco, APIs are 36% of the population, yet we also represent 42% of those living in poverty. So we are excited to work with you to continue to address income equality, housing, violence, working on the backlog of immigration. We are excited that you are going to champion a $4 million earmark for Japantown. I'm sure Sandy, Dean, and John are very excited about that. And we just want to commend you for, your work with our members and community. So thank you. So with closing, we're going to take a group picture. We're going to push the tables out, and then we're going to ask members to come up.
Yes, May, though, I want to thank you. I just want to acknowledge that in my office, and some of them are here, Joyce Lee is the National Press Secretary. Lei Han is Special Assistant to the Executive Office. Shama Sheikh is the Senior Press Assistant. And Anna Song is an Outreach Assistant. Arish Abbas is Staff Assistant. That's in Washington, San Francisco. Selena Sun, where's Selena? Selena's son, Selena, Calvin Ho, field representative, caseworker. We are very blessed in our office with the brilliance and the talent of the AAPI community. And now we're getting ready for our photo. Thank you. As we do so, let us thank Dean and Callie and Gordon. Let's thank Dean and Callie and Gordon and Mabel and each and every one of you for being here. Let's applaud yourself.